So I'm sure you've all seen this clip going around on social media, or perhaps you've listened to the full podcast of The Overlap by now. Basically, Roy Keane, and the best way to describe it, going on an angry rant about Bruno Fernandes, seemingly about his captaincy most of all, and that talent isn't enough. That's what he kept repeating over and over again, that Bruno is a talented player, but that's not enough for a captain of Man United. And obviously, Roy Keane is in a great position to talk about this because in my lifetime, he's probably the best Man United captain there has been, and he's right up there in the whole lifetime of the club. So, of course, right, he's got a good point of view on this. But I think I have to disagree quite a lot with what he was talking about, not showing for the ball, not trying hard enough, not closing players down. It seemed a little bit harsh to kind of single Bruno Fernandes out. And I kind of understood what he was saying when, well, if you can't have a pop at Bruno, who are you having a pop at? But I think that's kind of missing the point of the problems at Man United right now. It's not necessarily a single player. It's years of mismanagement of the club, bad recruitment, and now you've got the team as they are. It's just not good enough. And I don't want to make this video about the problems of Man United. Maybe we can do that in a different one. But I think that's generally the issue. It's not Bruno Fernandes specifically. It's not just Højlund or whoever you want to talk about. It's about the squad and the first 11 as a whole. It's just not good enough, unfortunately, and that's why they're in the position that they are in. I don't think it's down to Bruno Fernandes' captaincy. And let's be real, even if you were to take the armband off of Bruno, who would you even give it to? There are not many options to choose from right now. I actually think that Harry Maguire was quite harshly treated when it came to captaincy. I understood he's not always in the first 11, didn't always play great under Ten Hag, whatever it might have been. But I actually think from a captaincy point of view, he's not that bad. Once you start going past Maguire and Fernandes, there's really not that many other candidates. Like Casemiro, no. I think if Man United could, they'd probably get him out of the door. Like Luke Shaw's never fit. Like he's probably one of the most senior players in terms of how long he's been at the club for. But captaincy, I'm not quite sure about that. So Bruno's probably the best option. And is Bruno petulant at times? Yes. Does he go around rolling on the floor sometimes when he gets tackled? He's always moaning at the refs? Absolutely. But I don't think all of those things necessarily make him a bad captain, especially when you look at the other options there are. And when Keane was talking about him, like not showing for the ball and with not working hard enough, I don't think he specifically said that about Bruno, but he basically implied it because he was talking about Ian Wright and how his team would appreciate his hard work. And he was kind of implying that's not what Bruno was doing. But that's all he ever does. That guy never stops running. He's always available. He's had to play over the last couple of seasons as a 9. He's played on the right. He's played as a 10, an 8, a 6. I think it was the Liverpool game in the FA Cup last year. I might have it slightly wrong. He was even playing as a centre-back. Never moans about any of that. Or at least not that we see publicly. Maybe there's conversations behind the scenes. Always available. Like, what more do you really want from a captain? I know Keane was talking about the Leicester game, Everton game. They're sat 15th. Like, the standards should be higher. Of course they should. But I actually think Ian Wright had a bit of a point where he said, you know, if you didn't have Bruno, you'd probably be even lower down. Then you're starting to really talk about relegation. And he has pulled us out of many, you know, scrapes, I should say, in the past. And looking at some of the numbers as well in terms of, you know, not showing for the ball. When you look at the touches this season for all players, sorry, let me just get rid of that. Bruno Fernandes is in 7th place. The only non-defender that's higher than him is Yuri Tielemans. Everyone else in the top 7 is a defender, and they're all centre-backs, right? Or apart from Vardy, who often plays left-back. We won't get into that, right? But he's a defender, right? So Van Dijk, Colwill, Vardy, then Tielemans, then Anthony Robinson, also not a centre-back, then Saliba, then Bruno. Now, partly because he always plays, but it's obviously showing that he is showing for the ball. He's getting on the ball and trying to make stuff happen. And then you talk about the not closing down. And so I had a look at the tackles that have been made so far this season. And if I just put it to, sorry, let me just bring up midfielders only, because obviously defenders make a lot of tackles. Let me just cancel that here. As you might expect, a lot of the more defensively minded midfielders are at the top. So you've got Idrissa Gueye from Everton, Moises Caicedo from Chelsea, Gomez, Wolves, McAllister, Liverpool, Partey, Arsenal, then Tielemans again. And Bruno Fernandes is in 13th place. Bearing in mind, his best position is probably as a number 10. He's 13th for tackles, so he is getting stuck in. He is closing players down. And I just thought it was really hard. Like, he's ahead of Ugarte. Again, that's probably a minutes thing mostly, but it's still pretty impressive. And maybe in the Leicester game or the Everton game, he wasn't perfect. But I think the idea of singling him out because he doesn't want to get on the ball or he doesn't close people down, it's just crazy. It was like Keane was just super frustrated at the Man United situation. He had to find someone to blame. And for some reason, that was Bruno Fernandes. Is Fernandes as good a captain as Roy Keane was? No, right? Nobody is going to sit here and argue that. But Bruno Fernandes is one of the best things to happen to Man United in the last 10 years. Obviously, he won trophies along the way, right? So it hasn't been all doom and gloom. But it ain't been great over the last kind of 5-10 years. Bruno Fernandes has been one of the standout players that wasn't just bad recruitment. And he's been excellent the whole time. There's hardly been a period where he's had like 10, 20 games where he's just not been good enough. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. But he's still a great player. And I just found it so bizarre to rule him out. And look, if we're singling out particular games, I couldn't watch the full match against Ipswich, but I caught a lot of the second half. Man United obviously down to 10 men. There was a point in the second half where Bruno Fernandes was back around the 18-yard box, his own 18-yard box. He blocks a shot. He then, I think he carries the ball, or if not, he runs and someone passes him the ball. So he's gone from 18-yard box in his own half to 18-yard box in the opposition half. He plays a ball across the 18-yard box. Unfortunately, no one connects with it. Ipswich get the ball back. Doesn't go out of play, I don't think. And he starts running back, and he's the first player back from that attack. So he's gone from 18-yard box, block to shot, all the way forward, on the ball, trying to make something happen. And he looked absolutely knackered, and he's still running back, trying to get into position to defend again. And obviously, Man United do not want to be in a position where they're struggling against Ipswich, where they're 15th place, right, and they're not up the league. But that is where they are right now. This is years of mismanagement that's got them to this point. And Bruno Fernandes is still like Bruno Fernandes could play for pretty much any other team in the Premier League. Now, before you all shout at me in the comments, I'm not saying he would definitely get into every team straight away, but he could easily play for Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, etc. No issues whatsoever. He's that good. And I actually think in some ways he's a little bit underrated. I think a lot of non-Man United fans dislike him because of the way he acts, which is absolutely fair enough. And it clouds their judgment of how good he is as a player. I think he's brilliant. And so to do that still, to stop Man United getting relegated, to do that against Ipswich, run the length of the pitch, block a shot, then come back again, that just shows the kind of player he is. I think he's done that so many times. So I have to disagree. I think the work rate is good. I think he shows to the ball. He tries. And by the way, on the closing players down, I know I talked about tackles just a minute ago. I think part of the issue is unless you've got a cohesive squad that's well structured and can play the positions that they're being asked to play, you are going to struggle to close players down because there's going to be gaps between players that shouldn't be there. Like, you wouldn't see that with like an Arsenal, for example. Their defensive structure is so well drilled, it's easier to shut players down because you're not so far away from each other, right? And sometimes you see that with Man United. They're just not in a good place right now. So, yeah, I love Roy Keane. I think what he does on the overlap media-wise is probably some of the best stuff you get out of him. Like, even superior to the, punditry and stuff he does on Sky. Like, when he was talking about the party that Gary Neville had and people trying to get him up to that. Like, I love that stuff. But the Bruno rant was definitely uncalled for. I don't think there were any good points made. And I think it was really harsh for a player that has done everything he can, in my opinion, since he's been at the club. And he's been at the club at the wrong time, basically. Like, if he'd been there in the 90s or whatever, early 2000s, I think he'd be regarded as a much better player than he is now. And I just don't think it's all his fault. But anyway, I listened to that this morning. I thought I would, or I listened to the full thing, the full podcast this morning. I saw the clip the day it came out. I thought I would just talk about it. So again, don't know when the next video will be up. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you again soon. And also, obviously, let me know what you think in the comments below. I think it was harsh, right?